if you're just joining us, we started this conversation, 2 or 3 weeks ago, called An Introduction to Love. And we are exploring a particular set of writings that some scholars have just said arguably it's like the greatest literary masterpiece in the biblical narrative. It's arguably one of the most profound chapters in the biblical narrative. And kind of my hope behind it is I've had some experiences with the only word I guess I could give is the word love, capital Love. And I think Paul, this guy Paul who writes this literary masterpiece, has also had these experiences. And so he started this spiritual collective around, I think it was like 51 Common Era. And roughly around 55 Common Era, so 4 or 5 years after, this whole collective just started arguing about everything. Imagine that. Imagine living in a system that couldn't agree on just about anything. I mean, from politics to resurrection. Is it literal? Is it not? Is it metaphorical? Arguing about how we're supposed to dress when we gather together. Arguing about the table and who can partake and who can't. And there was so much happening. There's just like division just 5 years after this early like collective was started. And so Paul's like, I've got to address some things. And he goes on this extended riff, which kind of starts roughly around 1 Corinthians chapter 13 or chapter 12, and then ends in chapter 14. And so what we're doing is reading right in the center of it, chapter 13. And Paul, good Lord, I think he's inspired by Plato's Symposium, in my opinion, because if you ever read Plato's Symposium, you know there's a lot that you see in that moment of what Paul is doing too. Very short statements, descriptions about his experience with love, all right? And so what we're doing is we're walking through these statements and really been kind of looking at the Greek. Last week we looked at even the word he uses because our English translation says love, but the actual word is agape. And so we looked at the difference in like first century of their understandings of love, the different words they use. So you have like storge, you have like phileo, you have agape, and there's all these different words that are used. And so our English translation says love, and I think it's a good translation. But Paul is like, I'm trying to help you see something, experience something, point towards something. I think it's been around forever. It was at the beginning. It's always been. When there was a big bang and an explosion, perhaps the power of that was this love, and this love has pervaded our world. It's all around us. It's within us. It's our essence as well. And to try to get at that, he uses all these descriptors, and I want to just kind of walk through those and look at those. All right? Now, that said, let's just read what we've already jumped into. And then today, people, I'm glad you're here. And by the way, happy summer to you. We're in summer now, all right? But there are just 2 phrases that I want to give you today. That's it. It's going to be very simple. We're in and out of here so fast, you're going to blink and be like, did we go to church? You did. All right, here we go. 1 Corinthians 13, verse 1. If I speak in the tongues of humans and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. I still love that, don't you? One of my favorite opening lines. Remember, this church is fighting about everything. And Paul writes a letter, and they usually, in the first century, they'd give the letter to, like, whoever is, like, the communicator. So, like, Katie did our welcome. Imagine if I'm like, Katie, I'm not going to speak today, but I got some things to say. So we read this, and then Katie gets up, and this is like somebody would get up, and they would read these words. So you can imagine this. Oh, they also had these speakers and communicators that were coming in, so it wasn't just, like, one person. And people started loving some communicators more than others. And they loved their theology more than others. So there's a whole group of people in church going, I'm Team Apollos. Like, that's my guy. I love his theology. He just gets it. But then there's the other group of people going, Apollos doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm Team Paul, all right? Like, I'm Team Paul. And then my favorite is apparently Paul addresses something in the letter because apparently there was a Team Jesus. Of course there was. Do you know what I'm talking about? There's always like the hyper-spiritual, like, I'm not Paul or Apollos or Cephas. I'll tell you who I am. Jesus, all right? I'm like, no, you're the worst of all of us, all right? And so Paul's like, get out of here with that Jesus group that you got, all right? By the way, that still exists today if you ever notice. If you want the ace card to any argument, just throw in Jesus and you win, all right? So, verse 2, check this out. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith as to remove mountains, but I don't have love, I am nothing. Well, that's a word. Verse 3. If I give away all my possessions and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but I don't have love, I gain nothing. Here's our text today. This is great. Paul stops there and he shifts. And in verse 4 through 7, what we're going to do over the next couple of weeks, verse 4 through 7, he begins to use descriptors to try to get at this love. Paul proceeds to describe love with 15 verbs, all right? Some of these verbs are positive. Some of these verbs are negative. He starts with the positive. We'll get to the negative next week. Let's start with two positives, all right? He says, how can I explain this love to you? 2 words. This love is patient. This love is kind. Love is patient. Love is kind. Now, those are 2 English words, patience and kindness, and I want to zero in on those today, but I do want to get at the Greek behind these English translations because though I think these words are pretty good, there are no one-for-one translations, so no one nails it, but I do think these are pretty good words based on how I understand how the Greek is written in this moment. But I want to get underneath the English translations for a minute, too, to try to give you perhaps maybe a little bit of what Paul is getting at. But let's just play with what we've been given for just a moment, all right? Paul says love is patient. Here's the question. What does he mean by love being patient? Does patience mean that we're willing to put up with whatever without getting upset? Does patience mean that we never raise our voice? Does patient mean that we are always or never show like a sense of passion about something? Does patience mean that we don't rebuke or confront when we need to rebuke or confront? What is it that Paul is getting at when he says love is patient? Now, he uses a Greek word here, and the Greek word can literally be translated this way: long-suffering, forbearing, or persevering. So this Greek word is made up of 2 words. You have macro, which is like far away, and it's combined with thumos, which the best English translation we have is anger. So in some sense, what Paul is getting at is we have the English word patience, but if you were to get a little bit closer to the actual Greek that Paul is getting at here, here's maybe what he's trying to say here. Love is patient. Love is able to put anger far away from itself. Hang with me now. This idea in context of a spiritual collective in 1 Corinthians 13 could be something like this. This is about people who have the ability to retaliate, but instead choose to refrain. Okay? This love that Paul is describing is when you have the right, the means, and the reason to retaliate with someone, but you choose grace instead. This is about a love. This love is choosing grace, mercy, and understanding over retaliation. This is about a love that is not impatient when others aren't who you need, expect, or think they should be. Now imagine that idea with the Corinthians, who were incredibly impatient with those who didn't believe quite like them. Imagine that idea in a collective of those who had different opinions about all kinds of subjects. That what Paul is saying here is, I've had an experience with this love, and the one thing I can tell you about this love is that when it has all right to retaliate, it chooses grace again and again and begin? Now, let's just pause here for just a minute, okay? I want to say a couple things. I have stories because I was away 2 weeks, and I have stories, which is what you come for anyways, all right? First of all, let me say this. Pause here. Have you ever had an opportunity to publicly cancel someone because you had receipts, but you refrained and you showed grace instead? Quiet in here. Quiet. There have been 2 moments in my life where someone has hurt me, wounded me. And when I say hurt and wounded, I'm not like, man, they hurt my feelings. Certainly hurt my feelings. But when I say hurt and wounded, I mean real repercussions. Do you all know what I'm talking about? Where someone does something, and it's almost like Jesus has this great line when he's getting crucified. He looks at the people and says, "Forgive them, Father, they do not know what they're doing." I always love that line because I think Jesus is talking about consciousness. I think what he's saying is those people are unconscious. They don't know. But then there's a subtle side of me where I've had a couple experiences where I'm like, wonder what Jesus would have said about this guy. Because there is a level at which when I was hurt, they knew exactly what they were doing. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you ever wrestled with that idea that Jesus says they don't know what they're doing? I'm like, not that person. They knew exactly what they were doing. You know what? And they did, and that's why they did it. It was almost as if they had been hurt and wounded themselves. And so they decide that they're going to hurt and wound somebody else. You've heard that mantra before, hurt people, hurt people. Do you know what I'm talking about? The reason that you hear mantras like that, if you lean in, sometimes it's because, check it out, there's a little bit of truth in there. Do you know what I'm saying? This is why it's lasted. And so there have been 2 occasions in my life where someone has hurt and wounded me. Now, it has felt in the moment that they knew exactly what they were doing and why they did it. What I realize is you have to go layers deep here, all right? I'm asking you to invite Eckhart Tolle into your thinking, okay? You know what I'm talking about? Like Eckhart Tolle, if you don't know him, he's like, he lives at a state of utter bliss. I can't explain it to you. I went to hear him speak one time. He never moved from his chair, and he sat and talked monotone for 2 hours, and we were all like, it's the greatest thing I've ever heard, right? I would love to see Eckhart Tolle get upset when. I don't think it happens, but I'd love to see it, right? And so I'm asking you to just rise with me a little bit, like high stages of consciousness here for just a minute. Even when it feels like if someone's wounded you or hurt you, they know what they're doing, you do realize they actually don't know what they're doing. They know what they're doing in the sense that they're trying to hurt you, but the reason they're trying to hurt you is because they don't know that themselves have been hurt and they've never healed from the hurt, right? And so I've had these 2 occasions. And when I say there are repercussions, I mean repercussions. Like, I'll give you one, but let's keep it here. Don't out there, don't watch, okay? When I've shared this before, but when I first became pastor here, there were local pastors that were like, that ain't going to work here. Because there was like, at first it was just like charges of heresy, all that kind of stuff, or I'm going to take your ordination. I don't know if you know anything about how the church would have ordination. And I remember thinking, you can have you know what I mean? Like, you have it. It's a piece of paper. You're ordained, like, take it. And then they were like, it's heresy, all that kind of stuff. And all that stuff just kind of brush off. It's like it's a part of it. Well, there was one, like, gatekeeper. And I don't know if you know about the religious world, but there are gatekeepers. And I've told you this before, but they're self-appointed gatekeepers, and they stand by the door, and they're basically like, they decide who's in and out, and they decide what's going to work and what's not going to work. And that's one of the reasons that we're non-denominational. People don't know that. But when we first started, we were not non-denominational. When we first started, we were Baptists, and because we were like, well, let's try that one. You know what I mean? But that's the world that we came out of. We were Baptists, and there was like a mega church who was funding us, and so I don't know if you know this, but there's all kinds of strings attached to that. You know what I mean? So here's how it works in any system: you have to toe the party line. Right? Are you familiar with it? Am I talking to myself? If you're familiar with this, you have to toe thanks, Kevin. You have to toe the party line. And if you don't toe the party line, you know there are, now check this out, passive-aggressive consequences. So they didn't come out and are just like, hey, here's what we're going to cut your funding. No, that's not how it works. You know what I mean? Because they have to present themselves as 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient, love is kind. So, and this is where Christianity gets real washy here, because people in the name of, well, love is patient and love is kind. But then when no one's looking, they'll cut it all off. But then they'll say, well, you're just disobeying God. And by disobeying God, that means you're disobeying them. You know what I'm saying? And this is a part of the dilemma of like spiritual gatherings is, if you're not careful, over time you begin to believe that your perspective and God's perspective are exactly the same thing. And so what happened early on, this is years and years ago, couple of these leaders, but one of these leaders, the gatekeeper, the godfather of all of them, just came at me. And I did my best to kind of show love, like an understanding, like understand where he comes from. But then he gathered people, and they gathered together, and they tried their best. They literally approached our team and just said, we as a group of pastors have come together, and we are asking that Cody be fired. So when I say wounded and hurt, I don't mean like, oh, someone wrote a bad email. Do you know what I'm talking about? I mean like this is my job. Like this is like, and I'd never met most of these individuals. These are like my people. Well, check this out. I'm just giving this to you, and I check my own ego at the door. All right, I am aware of my own ego. All right, and there are beautiful things to the ego, but there are sometimes when it takes over, it's not a lovely experience, right? Well, turns out the team that was here was like, the things that they're asking us to fire you over, like, I just want you to know that's why we brought you here. And I was like, this is why I love Vining Slake, right? And so we just kept going, right? We kept going. And over time, those people left. And check it out. I shake my head at this, but I'm still here, which is still baffling to me, to be honest with you. And check this out. You're still here. You're still here. And if you knew our story and where we come from, you would know how miraculous that is, all right? But one of the gurus, one day I was out and about, and someone basically, and this is metaphor, handed me a long receipt and was like, you know that guy that came at you? We have his records. And I remember taking it, and in the moment my ego was like, yeah, I felt so powerful. Do you know what I'm talking about? I grabbed that receipt, I wadded it up, I stuck it in my pocket, and I'm like, and then I took a bath in it. Do you know what I mean? Just soaked. And it felt so good. I was like, oh, look at there. Look at there. Huh. You ever seen, you have receipts and then you have CVS receipts? Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you know what CVS receipts are? You go in and you're like, I'm just buying a thing of lotion, and it's like, and you're like, good God, what is this? What did I buy? And like, other people worried about paper, and I'm like, guys, if there is an injustice in the world, it is CVS receipts, all right? I mean, we are burning more trees from CVS receipts, and what I love about CVS is they're totally unconscious of it. Like, these guys that work there, they're like, yep, here you go. And then you'll sit there for 5 minutes, carry on a full conversation, get to know the person's social security number, and like, receipt's done. And they'll hand it to you. And it's like a 200-page book, and you're like, I purchased one item, right? The receipt that was handed me about this individual, I'm like, oh, man. And then I even toyed with it because I was like, well, you're a kind human, so, don't gossip about it. But then I would go out to have a taco and have 2 margaritas. Do you know what I'm talking about? And I'd be like, well, this person can be trusted, right? And so what I would do is I would just pull out the receipt and I'd read 1 or 2 lines. Do you know what I'm talking about? I wouldn't read the whole thing, and sometimes I would read a receipt, but I wouldn't say their name. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, oh, man. Is anybody else like, come on. The experience of being human, and I embrace all of it, but, oh, man, it's nauseous. It makes me nauseous sometimes. So I had these receipts, and I thought, well, what am I going to do with this? Operating out of being hurt. Can I tell you what my first impulse was? I'll tell you what you're going to do with it. You're going to go to social media, and you're going to snapshot a photo of the receipt, and then you're going to go public. Because that's going to do two things. It's going to boost your platform. It's also going to boost your ego, because I'm right and he's wrong. And then on top of that, it's going to push him so low that I now have the capacity and the power to destroy this man's life. But just for the record, I'm justified because he also tried to destroy my life. Yep. So I held on to it. And then have you ever heard this phrase, blackmail? I held on to it for a while, and I kind of put it in a little closet, and I'm like, I'm going to hold on to this because, and this is interesting, and by full transparency here, all right? And I can only do this here because I know you love me for who I am, and I love you for who you are. Full transparency. I remember thinking in the moment, here's how my spirituality works, okay? I remember thinking in the moment, this was years ago, I remember thinking, my ego loved that I had it, but then to boost my ego even more, I was like, you know what? I'm going to show grace. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, because I'm a good person. And then it was that moment, like, I'm a good person. But I'll tell you what, when he had his moment, he didn't show me grace. You know why? Because he's a bad person. And I'm a good person. All that's ego. And so I held on to it. But I want to tell you something. If you were really reading the book in me, I held on to it going, I'm a good person, so I'm going to show him grace. But I'm not going to burn the receipt. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm going to hang on to it because if he strikes again, do you know what I'm talking about? You know what I mean? But then you walk around with authority going, let him strike. Let that man strike. Send me one nasty email and watch me shut your life down. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you ever felt that kind of power? Okay. I say all that to you to just say, first of all, if you've experienced that, welcome to what it means to be human. It's beautiful. We embrace all of us, all right? The only reason you hold on to receipts like that is because, here, check this out, you're trying to protect yourself. You're trying to protect yourself because you've been wounded and you've been hurt. I don't know how to tell you this. Everybody's been wounded and everybody's been hurt. And part of the problem of the human experiment is that we're all walking around with very thick shields on. And perhaps this is why it feels like we can't experience the love we experience. It's not because the love is absent. The love is very much so present. It's that we have built up so many shields in the name of protection that we can't even feel the love that's present around us. God, that's a word for me. Used to hear this phrase. Here's a phrase that I totally disagree with. People used to say this to me all the time. I remember the very individuals whose receipt I had when I first started said, here's the thing you're going to have to learn, young man. You're going to have some thick skin being a pastor. Thick skin. And over the years, what I've realized is, no, actually, I don't have to have thick skin. Thick skin keeps you from feeling things. I actually want to feel the things. I don't want thick skin anymore. I want the thinnest skin possible. What I'd like to have is like grounding and stability, but I want to feel it all. I want to feel it all. And so, I mention all that to you because that's what it means to be human. But also, I want you to know that when Paul talks about love, like this is what he's getting at with this collective. What he's saying is, when he says love is patient, the English word we're given is yes, love is patient. Love is standing far away from justified anger and revenge and pain that you could cause someone else. So I'm going to throw this out here. If you have whatever you have today and you have a choice and an ability to show grace instead of retaliation, maybe this morning you lean into grace. Now you might be going, yeah, but he doesn't deserve grace. Well, let me ask you something. Do you deserve grace? Do you deserve grace? I'm not here talking about who's marginalized and who's not. No, I'm saying that all of us want grace. all of us want mercy. And I will tell you this, my experience has been the more you show mercy and grace to others, the more it will show itself to you. And maybe the Buddhist had that right. Maybe the idea of what goes around comes around. Maybe there's some truth in that too. And so Paul's just kind of getting at this statement. He's like, it's grace, it's mercy, and it's understanding of a retaliation. It's refraining from doing to someone what perhaps they've done to you. Love is patient. So a couple questions. Have you ever grown impatient with others because of their antiquated beliefs? Have you ever grown impatient with the pace of other people's growth? I'm having so much fun up here. Because I just, to answer to both those, yes. Do you find yourself regularly frustrated at others who act in ways they shouldn't? First of all, can we just dissect that for a minute? There are two words that stand out to me, frustration and shouldn't. This isn't, I'm not asking you to judge yourself. I'm asking for non-judgmental observation. How often in your life do you walk around frustrated? Your boss, your job, the way your coworker did that? Is that, maybe it's just me, but I have become aware that I've spent a good portion of my days looking at myself in the mirror going, why are you, what is that? It's not me because I'm perfect. You know what I'm talking about? I'm not in myself. I'm like, the human species. People around me. And the words that I've taken out of my life altogether is should and shouldn't. Let me share one story with you, all right? God, it's good to be back. I miss y'all when we're gone. I don't know if you feel the same, but I do. So in this relationship, I love you, all right? I was probably maybe about a month ago, I was playing golf with Tony. He's away today, but I was playing golf with Tony, and I got an email on my phone, and it was from, I have probably 3 or 4 therapists that are in my database that I have gone to before. They're my therapists. I don't talk about them a lot. The therapists I talk about are not the ones I go to because I don't need you to know who I go to. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's not that I don't trust you. It's them watching. It's not you all. It can go to my therapist all day long, but it's you just have to be careful with the I don't know if you know this, but the internet, it goes around the world, and so you have to be careful because we don't want people getting receipts on me. You know what I'm talking about? Okay. So, my one of my therapists, I have like what I call measurements of therapists. So like talk therapy, and then they go on and on, the list goes. And one of them is like what I call like the ninja of all therapists, and she's a hypnotherapist, and she's the one who's wrecked my life in all the most amazing ways. And there's like a list of them. Well, I got an email, and in fact, I'll just read a portion of it to you, and I want you to hear this in the context of love is patient. All right, let's see if I can find it because I prepared this talk in advance. Okay, so I get this email, and it's from the therapy center, and I was just out playing golf, and I just pulled it up, and it says, "Good afternoon, family." The name of the company, then family. I wanted to take a moment and introduce myself. I am the new office manager, and it had this person's name. I am so excited to be welcomed into this family. There'll be a couple changes coming that you need to be aware of. Effective immediately, all billing will be directed to me. All right. So someone just got a job. She's brand new. He's brand new, and I'm like, right on. That's cool. Now I know who's representing my therapist. Right. This was like 11:03. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like something like that. It's time. I got another email at like 11:04 that says, "Dear clients, We are aware that our office manager sent an email out in which she failed to blind carbon copy all the recipients. We recognize this is a violation of your right to privacy as a client, and we are working to restore your trust in our practice. We have addressed the situation, and the individual who sent the email has been terminated. Okay, now just pause for a minute, all right? Can we stop here and just say, because it's not us, how great is that, all right? Like, I was literally playing off, and my first initial impulse was what you were like, oh, but then I was like, can we play with the image for just a minute? Imagine going to work, and you go in, and your husband's like at the door, your spouse is at the door, your partner's at the door, like, have fun on your first day. I hope it goes well. I'm sending all love, everything. Yes. And you go to work, and you've already bought a vehicle because you thought the new paycheck was coming, and there was stability there, and you're like, this is great. And then you go in on your first day, and they look at you, and they give you the training manual and the course, and they're like, we're so excited for you to be here, and you're just like fired up about the new job. And then that you go home and you're like, the job's amazing. And they're like, that's awesome. Yep, there's security here. It's going to be great. You go in the second day, they give you your first assignment. And they say, here's what we need you to do. Send an email out to all the clients and let them like introduce yourself. She's right on. She sends the email out, and within 1 minute, they walk in and they're like, you've been terminated. All right. Now imagine her going home to her husband and to her spouse and to her partner going, so I worked there for 24 hours and I've lost my job. All right. Now, a couple things. One, just go with me here. That's the kind of love that I think we're accustomed to in our culture. Now, I'm stretching the image a little bit, but hang with me. That's the kind of love. The kind of love that many of us have been conditioned with in our culture is the kind of love that has no margin for error. No margin. You mess up, canceled. You get done. No love. No. Now, I'm not talking about platform. I'm not talking about influence. Some people need to be canceled. Yes. I'm talking about love here. The way in which we as a human species can cut people off by one mistake is how our culture has conditioned us. If someone even believes different, and this is why the social media experiment is such a wild thing, because we don't even know, few of us know love in the context of loving people for exactly who they are. We may say that, especially as a good like progressive space where we're like LGBTQI, love people for who they are. Yes, but when the Trump supporter walks in, do we also love them for who they are? Do you feel me? You know what I'm talking about. I'm just using that as an example, all right? Just everybody calm down, all right? What did he say? What I am learning, because when I talk about that, that's my family I'm talking about, FYI, all right? So what I'm learning is when I embrace my father, he and I could not see the world different. Could not see it different. If you put us both up here, and I have dreams one day that we will be, sometimes they turn into nightmares, but sometimes they're good dreams, all right? But if you put us both up here and you asked us the same 4 questions, we would give you wouldn't even know I'm his son. Like, no way. All right? But check it out. What I've longed for is for my father to love me for who I am. No different. What I've learned about my father is he longs for his son to love him for who he is. That's it. That's it. And maybe what this writer is getting at here, Paul, is he's just saying, yeah, love is patient. We live in the most hurried, frantic, and anxious society the human civilization has ever seen. And when Paul says love is patient, follow me here. Love, the love that I have glimpses of, this love, of course it's patient. What else would it be? Because this love, though it has emanations inside the space-time continuum, the reason love is patient is because love doesn't operate within our time frame. Love is patient because love has never gotten in a hurry. Because love doesn't get in a hurry. And aren't you grateful? I will tell you, my experiences with love is that is true, because love has been very patient with me. So much so that love loves me even when I have troubles loving myself. So much so that love is patient and present with me, embracing me for who I am, even when I look back and realize, boy, that wasn't a good season for me. That is love. Love operates outside of the space-time continuum. Love never rushes. Love is never delayed. Love just simply is. It's always present. It's always here. And it's always embracing everybody exactly as they are, right where they are. And it's been my experience that when you tap into a love that is patient like that, and you have a couple glimpses of it, you yourself start walking at a slower pace. And that's countercultural in a world where everything is so chaotic. Patient. Can I share this with you? How are we doing? We're good? Everybody okay? I mean, it's first Sunday in June. I mean, this is great. This is why I'm alive. One of the reasons why I'm alive is to hang out with you all, okay? My nieces they had a dance recital yesterday. 2 days. We had to go to 3 of them. You ever been to those things before? It's like a marathon. When I walked into the dance recital, there were people in the parking lot, like with chairs, like tailgating at the dance recitals. That's because they have kids, they go all day. Well, I went in and I was watching. They were doing the Wizard of Oz. It's like a Wizard of Oz theme. And, they bring the little ones out, and they're wearing these tutus, you know what I'm talking about? They bring them out, and they're all dancing, and they're fumbling around. Well, one of the kids, it wasn't one of ours, but one of the kids just walked out, and she was the one that was just, like, you have your routine, they're dancing, but she wasn't. And then she looked over at the instructor and just, death grip instructor's hands. Like, you could tell she was terrified. And for me, because I'm an introvert, I knew, I could feel her pain. Like, girl, I know exactly. Your mom pushed you out here, and you no more want to be in that tutu at this dance recital than I want to be sitting in this chair watching you in your pain and misery. And it's like we share. She doesn't know me. I don't even know. All I know is we shared a moment together. And then, like, they're trying to run around and do their routine, and what you realize is the instructor's like, this girl's blocking everything, so she has to kind of grab by the arm and do everything. And everybody else is doing it on their own, but she's the one that's connected and attached. And then eventually it got so bad, you know what the instructor did? Just picked her up. And the instructor's doing her dance thing with one child. And you know the parents are there going, we paid all this money for her to take dance lessons, and the moment for her to shine, for us to get photos to put on Instagram, is the very moment this child will not let go of the neck of this instructor. And I just shared a moment going, yep, it was loud and clear for me. Nothing wrong with hugging the neck and grabbing hold when you need some safety. That's all great. But God, it was loud and clear to me. Cody, what if I told you everything's actually going to be okay? What if I told you it wasn't just a book or just a pride statement? What if I told you, if you knew beyond any shadow of a doubt, love does actually win? The question then is, do you trust love? If you knew, no matter how bad our world got, no matter who's the next leader, who's not the leader, no matter what happens, chemical weapons, warfare, if I told you at the end of all of it, I have seen it, and I'm telling you, take a deep breath, people. It might get bad, but when it's all said and done, love actually will win the day. If I told you that and you were able to see that, well, think of how much more we could enjoy this time. You know what I would do? This is my experience. Clinging, I would let go of the instructor's neck. Like, you can put me down. And maybe if I really knew that love win and everything was going to be all right, maybe I'd even start dancing. You know what I'm talking about? Because all of a sudden you realize, oh, the suffering, the pain, and the heartache, was not even necessarily what happened to me. The suffering, the pain, and the heartache was what I brought on myself, overthinking what might happen. Yeah. Love is patient. Okay. It feels like a good place to stop, but we didn't get to kindness. But you know what's so beautiful about this? I'm going to be here next Sunday. So, yeah, but that feels right. That feels right to me. So, today, as you leave, you're re-entering society. I like to think of this as like a little bit of a camp pie every Sunday. We're in a bubble right now. Most of us have similar beliefs. That's why we're here. We've experienced a lot of the same things. That's why we're here. We commune together at this table. We're in a good space right now. Most of you, your kids are in the back. You're not worried about them. You're like things are good, right? You can breathe a little bit. You like it. You even heard some things. Maybe your eyes have been open a little bit. Maybe you're like, God, yes. Oh, that's great. But check it out. We're all going to exit. And then we go and I'll get in a car and then I'll drive. I'm probably going to get some food somewhere. I already told Katie, I was like, big check mark today. Nap is needed. Nap is needed today for sure. We've been traveling. I'm like, just a little bit of a nap. It's going to be great. And she's like, right on. We can schedule that. You have to schedule naps. I'm like, put it on the calendar. All right. But check it out. We'll get in the car. And you know this, it's re-entry. And it can be real fast before you know it. Chaos. None of us have any idea what's coming at us this week. Not a clue. Things can happen. All I'm saying is just here's the mantra this week. Love is not in a hurry. Love is patient. Love is outside of time. And love is patient with you. And love is patient with them. And love can be patient through you to them. Love is patient. It just is. So we're going to love some people for who they are exactly as they are. Blow people's minds with that. Imagine if this week you stop trying to change people. Does that feel good? That feels good for me. Imagine if the hope of the world wasn't resting on your shoulders. I gotta save the world. Nope. Imagine if you just took that big heavy load and just laid it down like, Yeah. So maybe we drive a little slower. God, maybe we do the speed limit right here on Cooper Lake. You're like, what's going on there? Because we realize that love is patient. Love is patient. When you're impatient this week, at that moment of impatience, I just need this to get done. God, time is flying. Just remember this. Time isn't flying. Time is not flying. Because time, as we know it, is a social construct. It's like, well, it's going to end one day. You have no idea it's going to end. That may just be the start. You may die and wake up and be like, well, it was all a dream. You know what I'm talking about? Like, you have no idea. I don't know. I don't have a clue. I have no idea. You have no idea. But I'm telling you, we created the Gregorian calendar. You know what I'm talking about? We created time, watches, all that stuff. It does not exist. It is an illusion that is helpful for us to operate of, but it does not in reality exist. And so I'm telling you, love is outside of that. You can operate outside of that. And when you do, you start realizing no one's in a hurry. Where are we going? Because time just is, love just is. So let's just do what we do. And maybe we start walking a little slower. And maybe we start loving those people for exactly as they are.